Hello, and welcome to a virtual version of the conference presentation that I recently gave at the Heroism Science Conference in Bethlehem, New Zealand. This presentation today is all about shaping heroism through participatory online fan cultures in an analysis of video game heroes as non-human online personas. I do apologise if things get cut off on my slides. I was not able to control where my little video icon is, so I will put the slides in the accompanying blog post as well. To start off with, hello. If you don't know me, my name is Jasmine Connell. I'm a PhD candidate and academic tutor at the University of Wollongong in Communication and Media Studies. I do focus on persona studies, fan studies, and game studies. And outside of academia, I am a big video gaming and virtual photography enthusiast, which actually inspired the case study that I'm going to talk about today. So today I'm going to expose you to the wonderful world of virtual photography through an analysis of the video game hero Aloy and her non-human online persona. My vector of interest is the queering of Aloy, because this reveals what happens when people do things with fictional characters, such as co-curate an online persona for them. And this practice of remixing media and fan production has a long history in fan studies, which helps me bridge a gap in the persona studies literature regarding how micropublics or audiences contribute to the assemblage of an online persona. And this relates to an understudied area of persona studies, which is the focus of my PhD thesis, and that is the collective dimension. So this particular research is seeking to answer the question, what role did fans have in the queering of Aloy in Horizon Forbidden West downloadable content, Burning Shores, through their development of her non-human online persona via virtual photography. Aloy is the protagonist of the Horizon video game series, which is a post-apocalyptic action role-playing game. And the representation of her character exists across several game texts, including Horizon Zero Dawn, the accompanying DLC, Horizon Forbidden West, the Burning Shores DLC, Call of the Mountain, which is a virtual reality version of the game. And there has also been a third title announced in this series. In addition to these, Aloy is represented intertextually in other game texts, comic books, and board games, such as playable character in Monster Hunter, a skin in Fortnite, there is a comic book series for Horizon itself, and a board game. But fans also represent Aloy through fan productions like game captures, fan fiction, and fan art across several online platforms, as well as their individual console profiles, some examples of which I have popped on the screen behind me. And when Aloy is represented in this manner, the collection of these fan productions create paratexts that form an online persona for Aloy. And this forms the focus of my research, if Aloy can have a non-human online persona, and examining the role of the audience in co-curating this persona. But before we go on, it is important to understand what persona is. So it is the performance and assemblage of the individual public self, derived from the ancient Greek theatrical practice of wearing prosopon masks to signify different acting roles. And this led to several psychoanalytic and social role perspectives of persona made by Jung and Goffman. And due to shifting media environments towards what is called a presentational paradigm, persona is no longer just a social role, but an everyday robust media practice where we engage in online identity formation. So therefore, non-human online persona is simply non-human things with this same capacity to engage in a public performance of self online. While the concept of non-humans possessing a persona is not new, the idea of non-human online persona involves a new understanding of the self and non-human agency in our digital era. So non-human online persona might refer to things like animals, bots, artificial intelligence technologies, fictional characters, Vocaloids, virtual bands, and virtual influencers, or for our case today, video game heroes. And the video game hero persona demonstrates this phenomenon by moving away from looking at persona as an extension of human self, by emphasizing the collective dimension of online persona, due to it being an online assemblage that is co-curated by its audiences. And this helps us understand the context and conditions under which these personas come into being, as well as the practices and processes involved in curating one. In addressing the topic of the conference that I presented at, the topic is important to consider when looking at everyday heroism, because popular culture is an integral means for understanding heroes in the real world. So representing diverse heroes in games is important, and fandom is an everyday practice with a role in these heroic representations. So to answer the research question that I proposed today, we do need to start with an understanding of representing video game heroes. The concept of heroism has evolved over time, with roots in Greek mythology, where heroes were seen as protectors, often possessing great courage and strength. The hero's journey, as described by Joseph Campbell in 1949, is a universal narrative pattern where the hero embarks on a quest to resolve moral disorder. But in video games, this heroic journey is instead experienced by the player, who embodies the hero through gameplay. And this reinforces how the concept of the video game hero is dynamic and has redefined the classical hero in several ways, such as focusing on unpredictable stories rather than telling of past events, having fluid rather than fixed heroic characters, inviting everyday individuals to become heroes because the heroic condition is not always dependent on birth or descendants from a god in video games. And most notably, video games place the development of heroic traits literally in the hands of the player as they navigate a virtual fictional world, bringing to life these tropes of heroism. Similarly, when players share game captures of Aloy, they bring her non-human online persona to life. So by comparing Aloy's character and her non-human online persona, we can unveil insights into how the collective dimension of non-human online persona functions and how the assemblage is contributed to by fans. And Goethel's and Allison's 8 great traits of heroism, as well as gender representation, are useful lenses for this examination. So Aloy's in-game character showcases several of the 8 great traits of heroism, which are on the slide behind me. For example, her compassion in side quests and dialogues when she helps strangers, even if their needs diverge from her main mission. Her loyalty to her tribe, despite their initial rejection of her. And her dominance on the battlefield with her skills both in archery and in use of the environment. Through virtual photography, fans can develop or reinforce these traits. For example, representing how Aloy is courageous by venturing into unknown territories and facing giant robotic creatures. How she is considered amazing by other characters due to her ability to interface with and understand ancient technologies. And her leadership. While she's not always seeking a leadership role, when the situation demands it, Aloy does take charge, guiding those around her towards a common goal, such as the end of Horizon Forbidden West. Sorry if that is a spoiler for you. But alternatively, it's integral to examine how Aloy is a rare, good representation of a female video game hero, because historically, video games lack good representation of female heroes due to industry assumptions about player preferences. And it is interesting to note also that the original definition of hero from ancient Greece did refer to a woman, but it has become such a masculine word to the point where we do separate between heroes and heroines. So it is important to look at gender when we think about representation. Aloy is an example of a hero that does embody both hero and heroine traits without being overtly sexualized. and her gender is not central to her story except for her connection to Elizabeth Sobek. And virtual photographers can either uphold or deviate from this representation, as demonstrated in the difference between this in-game pre-rendered cutscene and a customized, potentially sexualized photo mode portrait of Aloy. So this flexibility to represent Aloy demonstrates the player's agency to shape not only the in-game character, but the online persona of Aloy. And why fans do this might relate to the immersion of a video game, which Csikszentmihalyi and Michaelides et al. Describe as a flow state that one experiences when they are intensely focused on an activity. But players may go beyond this to experience identification, where they lose awareness of themselves and imagine their sense of self as the video game hero. Burgess and Jones' 2021 study of Aloy reveals insights into how players relate to Aloy's character in this way, where players experienced identification by mirroring Aloy's emotions. They demonstrated immersion by developing emotional attachments to her. However, they did find that the players saw Aloy as having a distinct persona, which they simply guided and controlled, rather than merging with their own persona. And this distinction is an important step in defining where Aloy's character ends and where the online persona begins, as well as the role of fans in co-curating the online persona. So having covered how Aloy is represented in-game, let us move on to how fans contribute to a non-human online persona that extends this heroic representation. Aloy's non-human online persona is an assemblage because it is a complex entity comprised of the relationships and interactions between individual components, which might consist of human and non-human actors, various platforms, digital objects, social practices, and black box elements, which are the elements that are unknown to us or we're not able to see fully into, such as algorithms and coding. The online persona is layered because the fictional character is enmeshed with but distinct from the non-human online persona. And it's a collective because it's a negotiation, a dynamic process between multiple parties that are actively involved in sculpting the online persona. So this highlights the integral role of fans in co-curating the assemblage, as they are human actors who are highly performative and productive. We can describe this role by looking at the concept of participatory cultures, which is a concept developed by Henry Jenkins from as early as 1992 to describe the way that fans go beyond simply consuming media texts to do things with them, and in doing these things they have relationships and develop social circles and communities. So there are several frameworks that are useful for analysing this, including Rasson's Properties of a Participatory Media Culture, as well as Jenkins from 2009. But today I am going to focus on the new literacies of participatory culture, because these demonstrate the labour of love involved in participating in virtual photography. Because while it might seem simple to take a screenshot and post it online, the virtual photographer must navigate the transmedia story of the Horizon universe, understand how to take the screenshot, share the screenshot in-game if possible, or navigate some very frustrating processes to export this screenshot so that they can edit it, engaging in appropriation and textual poaching here. Then once they are happy with the screenshot, they have to select the best platform for sharing the content and understand the practices for posting on this platform, such as using the right hashtags or adhering to community regulations and rules. And then finally, the virtual photographer most likely crafts their own online persona, through which they share the virtual photography. And this is the actor within the wider network of nodes that contributes to Aloy's non-human online persona. But what does all of this have to do with the queering of Aloy? Queering originates from queer theory and refers to challenging and deconstructing normative assumptions related to gender and sexuality. So we can argue that Aloy's character has always engaged in destabilisation of male-female binaries through the combination of hero and heroine traits within her characterisation. But the 2023 DLC Burning Shores introduced sexuality to Aloy's character where it was previously non-existent, thus including a more concrete queer representation within the games, beyond several ambiguous NPC backgrounds and dialogues that hint at relationship orientations. So by design, the Horizon games do not explicitly define Aloy's heroism by her sexuality, and this is evident in the absence of a romance game mechanic for Aloy. However, following extensive fan discussions and online conjecture regarding Aloy's sexual orientation from 2017 onwards, her queerness was officially made canon in the 2023 DLC Burning Shores through an optional sapphic kiss with another major character that was introduced in the DLC called Sekya. So clearly, the development of Aloy's non-human online persona, which is a collection of virtual photography, fan fiction, fan art, and fan discussion, impacted the representation of Aloy's canon character, underscoring the multifaceted role of the audience in contributing to the character and persona by highlighting the ability of fans to influence canon narratives through fan-producer interactions, the importance of the collective in shaping the online persona, given that we don't consider a fictional character as being able to have a self, and how fandom can help identify the needs and wants of players when engaging in diverse representation of heroes in popular culture. So to address the research aims, this reveals that the player's role in representing video game heroes extends beyond the screen, especially when they engage in virtual photography. And viewing non-human online persona through this lens helps us develop existing theories of agency, immersion, and heroic traits in relation to persona studies and fan studies, bridging several gaps through the intersection of these areas. And this case will reveal unique insights into how virtual photographers represent Aloy as a female video game hero and investigate their role in the decision to include the sapphic kiss in the 2023 DLC. Regarding my PhD research, the case will reveal it will help define non-human online persona as something that is decentralized, because although it revolves around one non-human entity, no single user has control over the persona. So this reinforces the importance of co-curation between various actors to form the assemblage. And it has helped develop the connection between persona studies, fan studies, game studies, and heroism studies, because heroic traits are important to consider when analysing the similarities and differences between Aloy's character and the non-human online persona. And virtual photography is a participatory media culture. And the way that fans are involved in developing Aloy's non-human online persona does reinforce the active role of several agents in forming an online non-human persona assemblage. And finally, this case has provided insight in the need to distinguish between an entity and its online persona in a similar manner to how we distinguish between text and paratext and ourselves and our online personas. My recent publication on podcast persona does begin to investigate these complex layers within a persona assemblage, but this is something that I hope the Aloy case further explores. I did also want to flag that this research is very preliminary, so I hope to investigate the topic further by elaborating on underdeveloped areas of the framework to understand the role that fans had in the queering of Aloy beyond online discourse through their virtual photography of her in the creation of a non-human online persona. In doing so, I will compare this case with another female video game hero, most likely Ellie from the Last of Us series, as she is another example of a hero with a balance of hero and heroine traits that is queer. So I wonder if there is a stereotype here to be explored, given that Ellie and Aloy are two of the most prominent female video game heroes. And that brings me to the close of my presentation. Thank you for joining me if you have made it this far. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me and I'll put my details in the blog post. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.